I'm here.
Okay, good. Thank you for that quick introduction. So, interruption. Well, I'm just trying to do two at once. So, Randy runs a website called Cool Infographics, which is a great way to advertise yourself if you're into that particular space. He's got his own visual design firm, which is called Infographics. He's done all kinds of work for all kinds of people, and he's a absolutely, like I said, fantastic speaker. We're real fortunate. I'm going to shut up here and turn the program over to him. And Randy, we do appreciate you joining us. You are lecturing here at VCU, and I think I need to get you to share your screen one more time, even though it looks good on this end. Nope, it's perfect.
You see it now?
We did great.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
Yes, we are perfectly good. Thank you again for joining us.
Yep. So thank you, Peter. My name is Randy Krum. I've been working on designing data visualizations and infographics for a little 10 years now. In 2007, I started the coolinfographics.com website. On that site, I try to highlight, the best, whether it's just a data visualization design or a design for news. Sometimes it's videos, and most of the time it's a static infographic. Come from designers all over the world, right? It's supposed to be a site for inspiration of cool new ways to visualize data. And usually there's some commentary there about why I thought it was cool and worth posting. And sometimes there are suggestions and recommendations of just what I would do differently. Posted, and always has a link back to where you can find the original. Cool. My book came out 2 years ago. It's going to cover anything we're going to talk about today, plus more. There's a lot more detail. I know, Peter, you have a couple copies. I don't know if you've got any there with you that someone could browse through, but you find it anywhere, and I'll give you a link at the end to download a free chapter. And then Infonewt is my design company. Kept that separately from the Cool Infographics site, where Infonewt, we design, of course, the public marketing social media infographics that you see online. That's about a third of our business, but 2/3 of our business is working with confidential proprietary information that companies have, stuff that is never going to get posted on the internet. But companies have learned from all the public awareness and explosion and excitement about infographics that they can do better internally at analyzing their data and being able to communicate it even within the company or to customers or to their board, to shareholders, but really being better at visualizing data and being better communicators with their data. And so that's the kind of design we do as an outside contractor. On the slide, I'll back up real quick. If you do this sort of thing, I suggest following hashtags DataViz and or infographics. Both of those are used quite often. If you want to post anything, feel free to use those as well, but those are great hashtags to follow just to see what a whole bunch of different people in the graphics and data viz design industry are sharing on Twitter. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at @Krum. That's my main Twitter account, and where I post not only stuff that goes up on the Cool Infographics site, but also commentary from conferences or discussions with people on Twitter, that kind of thing. A whole bunch of slides. As Peter can attest, I probably have more than 100 visuals that I'm going to show you in the next hour. But I've put all those links in one place on one page on Cool Infographics for you. At coolinfographics.com/VCU, you find a page that has all the links to the examples I'm about to show you, so you don't have to be trying to write down or keep track of those URLs. So second, it's pretty easy to find, coolinfographics/VCU.
This end.
I'll get started as just an intro to infographics and data visualization. And it's sort of a background to what leads us and what built up this industry. We have an information overload problem. We do as consumers of information. This research tells us that as of 2014, the average American is exposed to what they call the information equivalent of 280 newspapers per day. That's how much information that you have to sort through every single day, whether it's watching TV, reading the news, reading emails and doing work, browse the web. You've got all this information that you have to absorb and decide what to do with. Most of it you filter out and throw away. The rest of it you either file away for action or actually, do something immediately with. Certainly, as you can see, has been growing dramatically in the last, say, 30 years. In 1986, our information was only about 40 newspapers per day. When people talk about having a short attention span, this is what's really going on, is that we are trying to filter through, absorb so much information every day. We don't have a whole lot of time left to try and do deep dives into a lot of things. So we end up skimming and trying to get through information very quickly. About data, let's just talk about the size of data. So this yellow square represents the size of a gigabyte. To give you a frame of reference, if you take a movie off of a DVD, it's usually 1 to 2 gigabytes in size for a full-length movie. Down this yellow square, that's a gigabyte. Now, bottom left corner. This red square is the size of a terabyte. It's 1,024 times larger. Nowadays, modern hard drives, half terabyte or a terabyte if you buy a new laptop, gives you an idea of how big a terabyte is. I go one more. This purple square is of a petabyte. So we have a full yellow pixel in the bottom left corner, which is probably really, really hard to see. That's the gigabyte. That's the size of a movie. The red square down in the bottom left is a terabyte. That's the size of a laptop hard drive. And then petabytes, we measure the size of mainly data warehouses, big data storage facilities. A couple years ago, Google was processing 20 petabytes a day data back in 2008. And I haven't shared any data since then, but back in 2008, they were processing 20 petabytes a day. Each petabyte is a billion movies. So it's a huge amount of data, especially when it's text searches. It's not a whole lot of data to process a search. There's that says that the entire written works of mankind in every language that has been written down since the beginning of recorded history adds up to a grand total of about 50 petabytes. Everything we've ever written down in every culture, in every language. But in 2014, that Facebook's data storage was up to 300 petabytes and growing. I posed this question to the audience, which is, why does Facebook need 6 times the storage than the entire written works of mankind?
There's a movie involved?
Yeah. The qualifications are the right things.
Exactly. No. So you're right. Images, audio files, and especially video files are taking up this immense amount of data, where it's not more information in a lot of cases than text would be, but from a data storage standpoint, it's immensely, exponentially larger than what just text would be. So I'll share is that in 2014, when the NSA was building their new data center in Utah, both Wired and Forbes wrote up articles about it. And their estimate was that when the facility opened, they would have about the storage capacity of 2,000 petabytes, and that was just its starting point. It was going to start growing from there. In the future, we're going to start talking about exabytes and zettabytes and even yottabytes. It's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger. We also have to deal with how much information is moving across the internet. We also measure this in petabytes. This is petabytes per month from the Cisco Visual Networking Index. This year, we're hovering about 76,000 petabytes per month in the transfer over the internet. Sometime in late 2016 or early 2017, it's going to cross over that 100,000 petabytes a month data moving across the internet. Every single day, as this data pile gets bigger and bigger, it gets harder and harder for all of us as consumers of information to go out there and find what you're looking for. When you actually are asking a question or trying to find information, the pile of information you're digging through gets bigger every day. Are in fact drowning in data. We're never going to have less data than we do today. It's only going to get bigger. It's not like next year in 2016 we're going to say, whew, Good thing we don't have to deal with all that data anymore. We got rid of it. It's just at the very beginning of this. This is going to grow exponentially from here. You know this. This is an ad campaign from Bing. I want to compare their results directly against Google search results called Bing It On. Their whole market campaign here is that they believe that their competitive advantage is that they're going to give you better results. And better means more relevant results. So they don't really show you any more, it's not how many millions of results you get from your search terms or that you get your search results in 0.2 seconds. They used to show that all the time. These days, it's really all about getting you the best results so that you actually do find what you're looking for as fast as possible. We as consumers of information and designers, we know this and want to tap into this. We're visual creatures. This study says that 80% of the brain is dedicated to visual processing. I've seen anywhere from 60 to 90%. Suffice to say, we are visual creatures. It's our dominant sense, whether it's your sight, your facial sense, your visual memory, our ability to see different things. In fact, we say that the human is the best pattern recognition machine on the planet. Computers continue to get better, but they are still not as we are at seeing patterns. So you can see, if you come across this in real life, you see this lion hiding in the grass within nanoseconds, within a fraction of a second, that you're seeing a lion, but you understand the meaning of that. Know that your life is in danger and you have to turn around and run and climb a tree or do whatever you have to do to survive. You do that faster than anything else on the planet. So I know this. This is a website called planet4.org where they are posting high-resolution photos from the surface of Mars. Looking for the black plumes that show where gas has escaped from the surface of Mars. And unable to get a computer algorithm to consistently find those for them. So they've posted this on this website, these high-resolution images, and are asking anybody to go create an account and start looking at images and help them by circling these black plumes, because you can identify, the plumes that are different than, say, just normal features or shadows or things like that. Really tap into as designers and marketers is called the picture superiority effect. And what the superiority effect tells us is that if you only listen to audio or are reading text only, that 3 days later, you're only going to remember about 10% of that information. I can tie that information to a visual, to an illustration or an icon or to a chart. If I can make that information visual, it actually taps into a different part of your brain. And if it's visual, 3 days later, you're likely to remember up to 65% of that information. And that's really key when you're doing, say, marketing or communicating information that you want your employees to make decisions based on, because, of course, you want them to remember all this information that you're presenting to them. And we really tap into this, and we really push really hard that you want to tie whatever information you're designing, whether it's in PowerPoint, a blog post, or an infographic, is that you make that information as visual as possible. In motivational posters in offices, it takes a big photo, ties it to a very simple text message that's related to the photo. So you got to have the information in text actually be related to the image that you're trying to use as your visual. In this case, this is called a demotivational poster, which shows you that if you're going to be consistently bad, you don't want to advertise how consistent you are. It's not really something you want to advertise all the time. Despair.com has some fabulous, if you've never seen it, some demotivational posters. Very funny. Doing this for decades, not hundreds of years, where there's a big and a very short message. It might be the brand, it might be a tagline, it might be a product description or a product name. But the idea is that visual is tie that information and make it more memorable for you. And if you remember the product, you remember the brand, making a purchase decision, you as a buyer, you're more comfortable buying products from companies that you're more familiar with. So in your mind, remember that visual and remember that advertisement. You're likely when you go to the shelf to buy that product. In fact, that's a big reason that companies have logos in the first place. You're likely to remember the logo of a company than you are the actual text name of the company. Again, if you recognize the logo, suddenly you that's familiar, you're more likely to make a purchase decision. And I do this in the book too. I need to make a distinction of what is an infographic. So when someone calls up and says, hey, we want to start an infographic project, to go through some discussion back and forth to figure out what do they mean by an infographic. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Visuals like all of these around us today in the newspaper, on signs, in posters, online, on the computer, but I don't call all of these infographics. We do design projects, we make the distinction that this is a visualization. This is a visual representation of the data, no more, nothing less. It's a chart. This chart has a little over 80,000 data that are all visualized that's of the stock market indices, but that's it. Face the reader to look at this and find out what do you think is important, what can you learn from this. There's really nothing going on in the graphic itself that tells you a story or what to look for. There's a, I guess, design between data visualization and infographics I call info art. These are visuals that are in fact based on data, but they really just make pretty pictures. They're not actually useful visualizations. This one in particular on the screen is visualizing the first 1,000 digits of mathematical constant pi. So each little segment around the outside circumference of the circle are the 10, 0 through 9. And this design is one continuous line, starts 3.14159, on and on and on for 1,000 digits in pi. So it is based on data. So it's info art. It's pretty. They sell it as posters. It's not very useful or functional. I'm not going to go to this design and try and figure out, okay, what's the 300th digit of pi? Or how often does the number 2 show up in the first 1,000 digits of pi? You can't use it as a reference tool, but it's pretty and it is based on data. Infographics. Use data visualizations, sometimes many data visualizations, along with illustration, icons, text, and cohesive layout to tell a story, all combined into, in this case, a static JPEG image. I think this one's got 25 data visualizations, a bunch of text, a handful of icons and illustrations that tell a story about e-patients and maintaining electronic health information online. We talk about infographics. It's using all these tools, which include designing charts and data visualizations, along with illustrations and icon design, and put this thing together to tell a good story. Designs for infographic designs tell what I call a three-part story. Where there's a sort of foundational information. There may actually be charts or illustrations in the intro, but it's the information that's basically grounding your audience to the point where they're ready to understand this new information they're about to reveal to them, the whole point or the main communication point of the infographic, which is that main event. That needs to be the main focus, the visual focus of an infographic design. And you need to finish it with some sort of call to action or conclusion, and a lot of designs forget this. Now that you've revealed this new information to your audience, what do you want them to do with it? If it's informative, it might be share this or pass it along. It might be visit a website. If it's trying to be persuasive, it might be vote a certain way, buy a certain product, eat your, call your mother, whatever it is you want your infographic to share. But you give them something to do once finish and have now understood this new data. An example, called the Tower of Beer. In intro, the Tom starts investing $1 a day at the age 25, and by the age of 70, he has amassed this immense retirement fortune, can afford this massive tower of stacked cases of beer. In the center, we show it next to a tiny Statue of Liberty on the left. In the middle is the tallest tower in the world in Dubai. And then, of course, Tom's massive retirement funds, some cases of beer. And so that's the visual focus. And then this one is not a heavy sales pitch. It's just learn at rothira.com who published the infographic. It can be that simple. No matter where they go in PowerPoint presentations, reports, or infographics, It's important to understand that you are trying to put your information, your data, into context for the audience. And to do that is to have more than one number. It's hard to visualize a number by itself. You're trying to provide context to tell your audience, is that a big number? Is it a small number? Is it growing? Is it shrinking? Give them some context as to how you, the designer, want to understand that data so that they're going to understand your insight or conclusion, your main point of the infographic. For example, here's a little over 3 billion global internet users. Put it in this giant bold font. You have it on a projector, so it's even bigger. It's this massive, big number. By itself, making this number really big doesn't give you any context. You, as an audience, you're still going to compare that number to something you already know in your head. Every one of you is going to compare it to something different because all of you come from different experiences. So tell designers all the time that big are not data visualizations. Making the number big does not help the audience understand it anymore. You also chart number by itself, bar chart with only one bar, and provides no context, really doesn't help your audience understand that information. You have to choose, you have to decide what other numbers to include. For example, in global internet users are compared to the total population of the planet, which is a little over 7 billion. So we have more than a third, not quite half of the planet is on the internet, as a user of the internet. So we're doing pretty good, but we got a long way to go. We're not even halfway through the population yet. So there are, more people that have never been on the internet than there are people on the internet. Create that context because we chose that second number to compare to. We choose a different number. So compare that 3 billion global internet users to the total population of the U.S., which is at 320 million. A little more than 9, almost 10 times every man, woman, and child in the U.S. Now it's a really big number, and we create that understanding if that's the direction of the graphic and where we're trying to convey information. Talk about the 5-second rule. So when people get infographics online, and this comes from millions and millions of page views on the Cool Infographics site, usually only spend 5 to 10 seconds looking at an infographic. So they got 5 seconds to make sure in your design that communicating your key message. What is it you wanted to convey to your audience? And be able to do it within 5 seconds of design. Before we even start the design process, we ask, what is that key message? So we know what we're trying to communicate. It's that one thing you want your audience to remember. Don't try to communicate 10 things. Pick one thing and be really good at communicating that. It's where Google's making its money. Starts off with 97% of Google's revenue comes from advertising. This nice, big, colorful pie chart of the top 20 most expensive keywords in Google AdWords. But you need to know that number 18 was rehab, or number 17 or 7 was donate. That's detail that a small percentage of your audience is going to dig into. Most of them, if they just get 97% of Google's money comes from advertising, hey, that's a colorful pie chart, and they move on something else, the next web page or whatever else they're reading. So that's mission success. We conveyed that Google's making their money from advertising. There are that called data dense that don't fall within the 5-second rule. They're meant to show an immense amount of data in a small space in a design. You may come back and look at different pieces of information. Different members of the audience may find different pieces of information. It's really meant as a reference. So this is the 2011 Wisconsin crash calendar. It shows all the automobile accidents that happened with 1 year, 2011, state of Wisconsin. And each column is laid out to match the calendar. And you can see the calendar on the far left side. Starts at January at the top and goes down to December. But each column is color-coded and is meant to show different causes of those automobile accidents. The easiest one for me to point out to you is that orange cluster right in the middle, down near the bottom. The orange column is accidents related to deer. It's deer season between October and November. And you can see all the automobile accidents that happen caused by hitting deer on the road. To its right are automobile accidents caused by alcohol. See the pattern that all the accidents, not all, most of them happen on Saturdays and Sundays, they happen on the weekends. And digging into different pieces of information, you start seeing insights, you start seeing patterns. You may come back to this and see something different a few years from now. Very data-dense design. Online, what I call the tall format. It's easy for us to scroll up and down. Web browsers are better at vertical information where it'll give you a scroll bar and scroll up and down. Don't do as well with horizontal designs. So most of the designs you'll see online are vertical tall designs that you can scroll up and down really easily and read. These work online your primary publication avenue. But if you intend to put it into, say, a presentation slide like this one, I've had to shrink them down so far you can't read anything. You try to print them out on 8.5 by 11 paper, they're going to get shrunk down where you can't really read anything. So it's worth, when you start a project, to think, how are you going to publish it? Because you design to match the paper size or a screen size, if that's another way you're going to distribute your information. But if online is the primary way you're going to distribute, then tall infographics work great. Handful of levels of complexity for infographics. Start with static, which is the most common, and move all the way up to video and interactive designs. All these fall under the category of being infographics. So static infographics are generally image files shared online. I would easily more than 95% of all the infographics out there are static infographics. They're so easy for us to share, to send around an email, to put into social media. Good at sharing images. Moving up that scale, then is what I call a zooming interface. So this is still a static image. It's a poster of the history of pop and rock music, but it's a poster, and it's so detailed that we shrink it to screen size, you can't read anything. You'd have to walk up to a full-size poster to be able to read it. So online, they provide an interface that allows you to zoom in, around. You can see in the top left where you are in relation to the whole poster. That bottom, you've got controls to zoom in, zoom out, move on the design, that kind of thing. Next information. So in a lot of cases, we want our designs, our data visualizations, to be as clear and easy to read as possible. And that means either minimizing or hiding as much of the text as possible. So voting results map for North Carolina that the New York Times did, each polling district or polling zone is color-coded based on the results of the election in that area. You can see I've hovered the map over one district near the top of the state, and it's popped up in a little pop-up window the statistics of the actual data from that polling district, but it doesn't show that until you hover over it. It keeps the design clean and simple, and they've got a smaller piece of your audience that actually wants to dig in and see the details. It might be text, it might be photos, it might be a table data. They can get that when it pops up. This is what I call clickable. So you can make pieces of a design in a data visualization or an infographic clickable with URLs or HTML code. In this case, this is showing the top 6 most promising wine apps for the iPhone back a couple years ago. It's nice color-coded categories, but each one of these icons is clickable, and so the user can click on it and take you to that app's web page or that app in the iTunes store. And the nice thing is that in this design style, you can export that design as a PDF and it retains all that clickability in the PDF. So then you can email a PDF to people that has all these clickable zones that take them to different either websites or different pages on the internet. Then we made it. This animation is called Wind Maps. Online will show the most current weather data from the National Weather Service. So it not only shows direction, but it shows direction and strength and connects the wind patterns throughout the US. But also lets you zoom in and zoom out. If you have a particular region of the country you want to look at, you can. Showing up to 12 hurricane over Louisiana, and you can see it pretty clearly. But this is done with code. Some people at Google designed this. Fernanda this was the primary person. And find this in code. It's available online. You can go take a look at it. Hard to share because this is all custom and you really have to go to the website to see it. Picked up on that idea and started to bring back animated GIF files. So you can take a static infographic and do an animated GIF file, which is as easy to share as a static JPEG file is, now adds a component of motion. Left, the wing patterns for different flying animals and insects. On the right does more ID where it shows the cheetah running and actually shows the charts moving, some motion in there. Starting to see more and more of these animated GIF infographics because they're so much easy to share. You can share them like an image. Facebook have just recently started turning on ability to view animated GIF files as well, so they're becoming popular because they're more functional when you share them. Then we move on. And so there are a handful of different ways that people are using data visualization in videos to communicate information both internally and externally. One top left is a visualization project that was coded offline but then recorded as a video. It's actually going through time, showing every red dot that is a new target store opening. You go through time and you're going to see those target stores start to accelerate. The one is a motion graphic where you've got icons and you've got data and you've got charts and text and sometimes a soundtrack and a narrator all running together. And so it really includes a little bit of everything called a motion graphic. On the bottom left is a live action video shoot that NPR did that shows these vials of liquid that represent the population in main continents on the planet, the 7 continents, and drips going into the vial represent the rate of births, and drips going out the bottom represent the rate of deaths. And it's going to show how we went from 1 billion people on the planet to 7 billion on the planet very quickly. And then is a TED Talk by Hans Rosling. He's a handful of them, and he's really, really good. If you haven't seen him talk before, I would go to either YouTube or the TED Talk site. And what he's got is this data visualization that's running in the background behind him. And his whole TED Talk is just talking about what he learned by visualizing this data and what you can see in the data as he's talking. And then top of that stretch of complexity for infographics is really interactive, where you create a design that your readers can change what's being displayed based on their inputs. This is a pretty simple one called the Tweet Topic Explorer, where it's visualizing the most common words that anybody you enter is tweeting about on Twitter. So this is, a map on the right of my tweets on Twitter. So each bubble is sized based on how often I use that word when I tweet. On the right, if you click any of those bubbles, it actually bring up those verbatim tweets and color code those most popular words in them so you can see what I said when I use that word in tweets. And you can enter anybody's Twitter ID and create this bubble map. And then software that Hans Rosling was using in his TED Talk is called Gapminder. And not only is it animated, but it's also interactive online. And they've got 300 different data sets loaded in here. You can change what's being shown on the X and the Y axis. You can change which countries are being shown. So here every dot is a country, its continent, and the size of that dot is its population, and they change over time. Play with this, you can change it, and then replay it again and run through the time, and it animate different sets of data. It's really fun to play with. The Gapminder is you can't load your own data. You can play with their 300 preloaded data sets. You don't have the ability to add your own. Infographic, I would say, is beginning to become a household name just because it's popularity in social media and online. Google Trends chart showing how often people use the word infographic when they enter search terms. Last 3 years, it has exploded the number of people who are out there searching for infographics. You get 2007 when I started the Cool Infographics site, it's even a blip. I don't even have a green dot in the chart because it has exploded so much since then. It's gone up over 10,000% in the last 3 years. Number of people searching for infographics. Anyway, that most companies or most people really have two goals when they want to visualize data. The first is discovery. You want to see if you can find that trend, that outlier, that insight. What is it about the data that tells a good story? Now you've found that, and you want to turn around and communicate it to somebody else, somebody who's not going to be as into that data as you were. He doesn't want to see data. They just want to hear what you learned from the data. Communication side is really where all the infographics you see come from, and all the designs that we do for corporations are really about communicating that insight or that story to a broad audience. Companies will share those externally. Those are the ones we all see online. So have a ton of design work that we do for internal use. Got some examples of how companies are using infographics for marketing. This is a press chart. Could have been a 10-step, basically bullet list in a blog post about how affiliate marketing works. But by creating these three characters and animating them and putting them on this path, it's a sequential process. It just magnified the reach and the effectiveness of this information 100-fold. Sugar Ray, the website that posted this, easily got 100 times the traffic that she would get from a normal blog post that she posts about affiliate marketing, so much so that she's now selling prints of this as posters to raise money for charity. Publish popular topics, hopefully related to their business. Right? If you are using keywords to find the infographic, use those same keywords to be related to your business, your brand, your products. So the one on the left is the visual history of Christmas trees and shows the evolution of Christmas trees over the last 100 years, and it comes from ChristmasTreeMarket.com. So if you find this informative infographic online and you go and say, hey, that's great, and I share it, then that name, that logo, the brand of ChristmasTreeMarket.com gets exposed to more and more people. A lot of to share information about themselves. The one on the left is Airbnb. They do a fabulous job of visualizing their data, not only for shareholders, but also just their general business growth, the number of countries they're in, the number of people that use their Airbnb service. The one on the right is from a private school in California. The Sage Hill School uses this infographic to talk to parents about why they should bring their students to their school, and talks about the graduation rate and which universities their graduates go to, and convey all the information about what they believe are their competitive advantages. And on this bandwagon as well, started to design what I call a company elevator pitch, which is an infographic that says, and I would give it more than 5 seconds, so maybe in 10 or 20 seconds, here's the key things that they want to communicate about themselves to somebody new, a new customer or a potential customer. What their business is, how big they are, their graphic footprint in this case, what their competitive advantage is. What are those 3, 4, 5 things that you want to tell someone about your business? Visual, and put it into an infographic and make it really quick and easy to tell somebody about your company or your business. So this is a series of infographics from hotels.com put on their press website. It's not on the main site. And it communicates data that they have gathered about the whole hotel industry, because they service, multiple hotel chains and not just specific to one chain. And so they get to see data and trends and see changes in the hotel industry as a whole. Changes in popular destinations or average price per stay at hotels. The one on the right talks about a survey they do every year about what hotel guests want in terms of amenities every time they stay at a hotel. And things like everybody, number one, wants free Wi-Fi. Unless we're the age of 65. If you're over 65, you want a free breakfast. Quite so concerned about having free Wi-Fi. Graphics have really evolved to being the most popular topic because companies have found that more people are willing to share valuable information than a sales pitch. You don't see many infographics anymore that are direct advertisement or a heavy sales pitch. Things like how to bake an apple pie, how to match shirts and ties, any kind of how-to or informative information that's related to your business becomes much more shareable because it's valuable information that people would share between each other and in social media. Hotels.com was on their press website. Honda designed this infographic poster under the launch of the 2013 Honda Accord, which was a redesign of Honda Accord model. And so they actually put this out at these banners for every press event that they had across the country. They put a USB drive with a PDF of this infographic in every press kit that was handed out to every member of the press that attended the events. And only months and months later that they just sort of published it online on their Flickr page, but online was never their primary target. Advertisements we're starting to see more and more. US, I think this is probably the most recognizable data visualization using the map coverage areas for the cell phone companies that Verizon does. And they use this over and over, and it hits home why Verizon thinks that this is their competitive advantage, that they cover more geographic space of the country. See more and more charts and data visualizations used in advertisements as well. Emails. I'm imagining some of you may have seen different companies that do this, but this is an example here of SumAll, which is an aggregate service that counts all your statistics from social media sites, and Nest, which is the programmable thermostat. And the emails use data visualizations with custom client information. So each email sent out is different. It's customized based on that customer data. So Nest email here is showing how much internet I used this month compared to last month, compared to other homes in my area, and does that by creating this visual on the fly with customer data. Humanitarian organizations get into much, much more serious topics with infographics. This is a design that shows the amount of bombing that's been reported within the country of Sudan, Sudan's government doing their bombing within their own borders. You get into a whole lot of designs about how charities' money is being spent, or why they believe their cause that they're raising money for is so important. You get into a whole bunch of very serious issues. In state government levels, a lot of graphics designed for lobbying purposes. So this is an infographic. It's actually a 16-foot infographic banner from the International Food Distributors Association that went up right next to the photo station where congressmen were going to get their photos taken. And so they're waiting in line to have their photo taken at the photo station. They had to stand in front of this big banner, and representatives of the IFDA could come in and talk to them about different aspects and data points about their business and about their organization. A lot of graphics are put out there for SEO purposes, search engine optimization. A couple things about using infographics for SEO that are different than if you're just trying to share information. A big one is that this is what an infographic looks like to the search engines, to Bing and Google. You can't tell what content is in that JPEG image reliably. They've tried to do OCR and it just has not worked reliably at all. So it's up to you or the publisher of an infographic to surround that infographic image on a dedicated page with text information, text description, the name of the page, the alternate text tag for the image in HTML, the metadata in the page code behind the image. All these things are what the search engines use to try and figure out what is image and when would it be appropriate to show this image as a search result. Work when you publish infographics to help the search engines understand what's in there and when it's contextually appropriate to share and show that infographic as a result for a search. The goal from the SEO standpoint for companies is to get links back to their website, specifically direct back to that infographic from other high-ranking sites in Google algorithm. And that's really what raises their page rank and what raises their visibility in the search engines. Is that you go viral on social media, but social media doesn't count when it comes to SEO and Google search results. So going viral or really popular on social media, on Pinterest, on Facebook, is great for exposure, and it shows your design, your content to many, many different people. Ultimate goal is still to get them to provide a backlink by posting about it, by making an article or a blog post, just liking or sharing it on Facebook to help anybody Google PageRank. Means to an end, it's not the end itself. And go with a lot of infographics online that are completely unrelated to the business that published them. For example, is an infographic about James Bond movies, was designed and released by H&R Block, which is a tax preparation company. So one has nothing to do with the other. This successfully was a huge hit infographic and helped raise H&R Block's web page PageRank, and Google really doesn't like this. I haven't figured out a way to beat it yet, so it still works, but it is something that they are actively trying to deprecate and make into a page's PageRank in their algorithms. They don't want unrelated content to value and PageRank and their algorithm to help sites. One new SEO is what I call online lifespan. This is your choice of a topic. Choose how to publish an infographic online. Amount of data research, design takes about the same amount of time for an infographic that's popular for a week than for an infographic that's popular for a year. So topic selection makes a huge difference when you're publishing online. There are easily 50 infographics about the wedding that happened a number of years ago. Give this an online lifespan of about a week. They published immediately before the wedding because that's when the news cycle was hot. As soon as the wedding happened, all these infographics essentially became irrelevant. Nobody was looking for them anymore. Nobody was linking to them anymore. It was capitalizing on a hot topic, but then traffic drops off a cliff immediately afterwards. Spill in the Gulf took longer because it took them longer in the news cycle. They were trying to find a way to cap the well, so probably about a month. And immensely complicated graphics, like the one on the left, compares the spill in the Gulf to every other oil spill in history. They spent an immense amount of time putting this together, but once the well was capped and the news cycle moved on, people weren't coming to do these anymore or linking back to these infographics anymore. This is a poster called Death and Taxes. Release an updated version every year, and it's a visual depiction of our federal budget. And each expense in the budget represented by a specific size circle that represents how much money is in each of those departments. So the Department of Defense, the FDA, and Human Services, the Social Security Administration, NASA, all these expenses in the federal budget are represented on this massive poster. Good for about 1 year. So once a new budget comes out, this is 2012, so when 2013's budget came out, the poster became obsolete. They have to update it every year to keep that traffic and those links active. This poster, it really changed year over year. Halloween has the same history, so that's never going to change. But it's popular during the month of October. So October, this infographic becomes popular. I get a spike in traffic. The company FreightCatalog.com gets a spike in traffic in October, which is great because online retailer of costumes, they love a design that's going to give them a spike in traffic every October. Pairing wine and food from Wine Folly is a pretty simple depiction of which wines go with which foods. And it's not like this information is going to change next year. It's not like next year dessert wine is going to go with different kinds of food. This has been out for years. They sell it as posters, and it's going to be valid for the next 10 or 20 years. So it has a really, really long online lifespan and drives those links and views for a long period of time. So that was all the marketing side and stuff that you see online. But like a lot of companies are now using infographics to better communicate and better understand really the immense amount of data that they have, but it's proprietary data that they're not going to share publicly. Data is certainly easy and common for us to work with. This is a depiction of a budget. Used a public city budget to show what a design could look like. Where on the left side, all those size circles show the sources of income for a city. And right, those size circles show how they distribute that through different expenses. The blow up is the police department. It's an $11 million police department, and you can see the breakdown of how they spend their money. Circles quite a bit. This is an example of showing these top customers by using size circles. And you'll notice there are no numbers. So a design like this could be posted in an office, in a meeting room, in a hallway, and it helps educate the employees that walk by and see it to understand who their top customers are, but it isn't giving away any confidential financial information. So if a vendor walks by and sees this, it's not a big surprise that Walmart's their biggest customer and they don't actually see any numbers or have anything that they can walk away with. This is a social media strategy showing which employees are going to be posting on social media and what sites that companies decided to focus their attention on. Video on YouTube, their primary channel of interaction with their consumers is going to be on Facebook, who's posting on their blog, that kind of thing. This is a diagram that's on their site to show you what happens if you report or mark posting in your news feed as spam. So you can basically see the process that Facebook goes through to view your mark and decide how are they going to act or react to marking posts as spam or advertisements as spam. Step process to design a website. So it starts with an initial meeting and doing a whole bunch of research and wireframes. The size of these circles shows customer involvement is involved in each of the process. The color coding key in the bottom right tells you what the different phases are. And this is on Simpleware's website showing their process because they're a website design company, and a way for them to clearly communicate to their audience, hey, here's what to expect if you come to us and start a project. Research data, both qualitative and quantitative. Qualitative data is not statistical data. So it's really small numbers. You talk to 10 focus groups, or you had 20 people in homes keep journals about your product. This is a word cloud. These two word clouds. The green one are all the positive reviews on Amazon. The red one are all the negative reviews on Amazon about a specific product or product line. You can visualize qualitative data like this that helps people understand and react to the data, but expecting or understanding or misunderstanding that it's statistically quantitative data. Quantitative data is where we have a lot more numbers to work with. When you go out and do a survey of 2,000 people and that's, brand A versus brand B versus brand C. This visual is showing 21 different survey questions all on one page, and it's pretty easy with these grids to compare the different aspects left to right within one brand, but also to compare top to bottom. So between three brands in any one of those aspects. 21 pie charts, it would be a whole lot harder and more difficult to be able to understand that data. So sometimes it's finding the right visual that makes the data easier to understand. An online retailer of eyeglasses does a great job visualizing their annual report. They visualize their shareholder annual report, but a whole lot of statistics and fun data just about their business, and they publish these every year. Space reports. MHPM is a project management company in Canada, and they visualize their corporate sustainability report as a poster that they gave out to their clients to help show what they could do to help and support their clients and customers. Okay, design infographics. If you're going to work with an internal design team or an external designer, these design tips are going to help you understand how to design better data visualizations and better infographics. And number one tip I can give you, and if the only one you remember, that's great, be accurate. Your visualization, your chart, your graph, your visual to data as much as possible. If your graph doesn't match your data, you will shoot your credibility in the foot. That is not a donut chart of 80%. That is not a donut chart of 20%. And I can't make this up. This is real stuff that people publish. And once you start looking for it, you will see it all the time where people miss the data visualization part. The data might be right, but the visual doesn't match it. So all the time that accuracy is the most important aspect of an infographic design. Your credibility, your name, your company's name is on this design, and you are yourself out there for critique. Card. Yet the number one rule of a pie chart is it has to add up to 100%. If it doesn't add up to 100%, you have seriously done something wrong. Now, Fox News here, taken data that had no business in a pie chart and basically forced it in there. The data is probably good, and it was a multiple choice question survey they did, but had no business being in a pie chart. As well, you will certainly see mistakes. This is Nielsen, does quarterly smartphone market share, along with a whole bunch of other surveys and results that they publish as a company. It's called a tree map, and in a tree map, each rectangle is supposed to be sized to match the data, and then the overall rectangle these all add up to is 100%. So middle, Apple yellow rectangle and BlackBerry the blue rectangle are pretty close in size, but they shouldn't be. percent and 9% are nowhere near each other. The data is good, but all the rectangles are sized inappropriately. And so later they post this version with the corrected version that has the rectangles sized appropriately to match the data. And it's a mistake. They weren't doing anything intentional about it, but it happens. You've got to have somebody review your stuff before you publish it, because that's your credibility you're putting out there. Is when you size objects, rectangles, or in this case circles, to match your data, you have to size the area of those objects, not the width of those objects or the height of those objects, because it's a two-dimensional object representing one-dimensional data. I'm trying to show a circle 3 times the size of the first circle. One at the bottom takes the area of the first one, what 3 times that area is, and then into what that diameter of that circle should be. Software only allows you to change the width and the height of a circle or any object. So what happens is if you triple the diameter, because that's the field you have to enter in PowerPoint or Illustrator or whatever, you actually create a circle that's 9 times as large as the first circle. And so this infographic was really popular in the last year from Vox Media. The left column shows by sizing those circles how much money has been raised, these charities fighting diseases. And on the right are the circle size based on how many people have died based on that disease. And they did exactly that. They used the diameter based on the data instead of changing the area. And so it oversizes the difference in these not only fundraising, but number of deaths. I redesigned it to show what the circle sizes should be. And if they are in descending order, but nowhere near the exaggerated sizes that were in the original infographic in the news story. I mentioned this earlier, but you want to tell one story really well. Don't try to tell 10 stories. This is the caffeine poster that shows you on the scale of 0 to 300 milligrams how much caffeine you're about to ingest. If you go buy that soda out of the vending machine, or you go to Starbucks and buy a coffee, how caffeine are you about to drink? It doesn't use sales. It doesn't do which companies own these or what country they come from. It just shows you how much caffeine are you about to drink. The infographics like this, which is just what I call just a big pile of data. It's an infographic about the company Salesforce, and they threw in here everything they could find about Salesforce. Growth in sales, important milestones, company acquisitions, strategic partners, app categories, geographic footprint, anything they could find, they threw in here. Doesn't really tell you a good story. You as the reader don't know where to start. There's no flow. You don't know where to look. There's no key message. So it's really tough. Transparent, and by that is to be data transparent. You want your audience to get over that credibility hurdle and start listening to your message instead of questioning where your data came from. There's a great example from the Canlis about the budget of the BBC in the UK. A tree map like the earlier one where the rectangles are sized based on the expenses in the budget. And the sources at the bottom, they list where their data came from. They have a link to a Google spreadsheet where anybody can go to the spreadsheet and grab the data and take a look at it. They can take a look at it, make their own their own analysis, whatever they want to do to it. It was just like hyper transparent. Just got people over any question about where the data came from and really focused on the map and what's come from that data. What action is again, lose all your credibility. So the White House has started putting out infographics on the White House blog. This one came out a couple years ago called the Obama Energy Agenda, and talks about our reliance on oil and gas and alternative energy sources and future projections, but nobody knows where any of the data came from. There are no data sources, nothing cited in the infographic or the blog post. So all the conversation online about this infographic was, make these numbers up. I've never seen these numbers before. Where did this data come from? This is not data that I have. It doesn't match my numbers. And so nobody was actually talking about the energy agenda. Everybody was just critiquing where numbers come from because nobody could match them up. Sources in an infographic or a PowerPoint presentation or a blog post. We all love Wikipedia. Don't source Wikipedia. Go to the bottom of any article that you find there. And if you find your data there, find the original source there. Make sure that data says what you think it says. You cite your data source, actually cite the original generator, that original location of the data. Your data by only showing the top level URL. If I tell you my data comes from worldbank.org, if you actually wanted to check it, you'd actually have to go searching and digging through worldbank.org to go find it, and that makes it way more difficult for anybody to double check your information or to, use that information that you've shared with them in their own decision making. Very transparent, right? You want to include full citation, links to a report or a data set or some way that your audience can get to that data. Visual, we talked about that early on. You want information you have and make it as visual as possible. Data as text only, we talked about really early, it makes it that much harder for your audience to read, comprehend, and try to understand that data. So this graphic shows how many users all the top social media platforms have. Facebook's up there at 1.4 billion, all the way down to Vine at only 40 million. They're all shown in exactly the same size rectangles. All fonts are exactly the same size. So visual indication here as to what the differences in these numbers are. It's up to you to look up and down and back and forth and comparisons in your head, which makes it a much more difficult process for you to understand the context of that information. The data never sleeps. It's a series of infographics out by Domo, and these are all statistics of what happens in a minute on the internet. And it's all in different fonts, different font sizes. Generally, the font size is just size to how big can they make that number in that segment, in the wheel, no bearing on the data itself. It's complicated for you to look at all these values and try and do all those comparisons in your head. And the point here is that infographic, if you visualize some data, but data is in text only, your data is going to be considered like a second-class citizen. It's secondary information that wasn't really important, wasn't important enough for you to take the time to visualize it. So a lot of readers will skim through just the visuals and will skip over anything that's text only. Please don't ever design a chart like this. So many things wrong with this chart, but it's a good example of why chart legends are so tough, is that you as the reader, you have to look back and forth from the chart to the legend to the chart to the legends to match up the colors. You spend a lot of time going back and forth, and it really makes it more difficult for your audience to understand your chart. And it happens by default. So this is the chart that PowerPoint and Excel create automatically when you say chart, I want a bar chart. It automatically creates that chart legend over on the side. And it's up to you, the designer, to take the time to delete that legend, move that data down into the chart, where here I've put the different age generations of the population down underneath each bar. Actually went one more step and put icons for each generation on top of the bar chart. Just try to move all that data in there so it's all within the single field of view, and it's that much easier for your audience to understand the chart. There are hundreds of ways to visualize data out of the big three being bar charts, line charts, and pie charts. This is a great page out of a book called The Visual Miscellaneum that shows a whole bunch of different ways to visualize data. The rest of that book is just bright, colorful examples of actual data being visualized in all these different ways. But there are more than these. This is a poster and a letterized two-sided handout that you can push called the graphic continuum that groups all these data visualization styles into categories. So it might be mapping, graphic data. It might be percentage, what they call part-to-whole data, or time-based trending data. And it's a great reference for you when you're trying to find different ways to visualize data you have. You can visualize it different than the PowerPoint template or charts within your presentation, or even just charts that come from the company template. You want to break it apart and make it different so that your audience is going to be more likely to remember it. Great website called the Data Visualization Catalog. Severino has started to create a dedicated page for each different visualization style, where it's got examples, it's got links to places that have actually used that data visualization style, and links to tools if you want to build that data visualization style with your own data. 2/3 of the way through, so if you scroll down, you'll start to hit visualization styles that are grayed out because he hasn't filled out those pages yet. But it's a fabulous project he's working on, and is great inspiration just to go find ideas of different ways to use your data in whatever you're working on. You have projects like this, which is called Underskin, where it's mapping out the different systems in the human body, the digestive system, the respiratory system, the nervous system, but it did in the style of a subway map. So it shows junctions and shows distances and geographic locations throughout the body of where these systems go. This was different, even though subway maps and the anatomy of the body were both well known, but by putting them together, Simon, the one who designed this, it basically launched her career as a medical illustrator. I mean, just by creating something new and unique and different than everything else that's out there. To that point, which is within one design, don't the same chart style over and over and over again. This one starts with a rose diagram, moves to donut charts, moves to icons, moves to a bar chart at the bottom, and it really helps your audience understand the move from one data set to the next. It helps them quickly move through the data so they know how far they have to jump to move to the next data point. You don't want to have a design that has the same chart over and over again. Here's 8 pie charts all in a row. Makes it really hard for you to remember, oh yeah, what was in the third pie chart? Because it's just, dulling the memorability of all that in your head. Some pie charts, matter of fact, 90 pie charts that were included in one news article. And just to make my point, it just makes it that much harder for you to remember one of those pie charts if you can't remember 90 pie charts. One exception to this rule, which is called small multiples. Now, small multiples are a new design style that you establish with your audience, like this first time, and then you repeat for different data sets. So in case, this is showing a visualization of every NBA basketball team. The top 5 starters on each team are connected by lines, and the weight of each line or how often they pass between each other. So language that communication with your audience, now they can look at their favorite team or their worst team, whatever teams they want to look at, and they're going to understand the data that they're looking at. You wouldn't want to create a different visualization style for every team. Here's another that shows when fruits and vegetables are in season. So nut is broken into 12 segments for the 12 months, and then they're color-coded based on which months that fruit or vegetable is in season, and then it repeats over and over and over for all the different fruits and vegetables. We want to, this one might have gone a little bit too far where it's visualizing character interactions throughout the first Star Wars movie. But if you come across an infographic that has too much text in the other direction, you're going to look at it even before you start reading it and say, whew, a lot of work to go through all that text. I'm going to move on. I don't have time to read all that. Really got to get over that first impression when somebody comes to your infographic. It looks like it's going to be simple and easy for them to understand. Because like we talked about, 280 newspapers per day is what we have to filter through. You come across what essentially is a newspaper article saved as a JPEG file and called an infographic, you're going to look at that and go, that's way too complex. I'm not going to spend my time on that, and move on. So what you want of visuals, small snippets of text to really have a high-level overview and communicate your key message. And if they want more information, they can dig in deeper. They can go to your website and that sort of thing. Don't try and build all of that into your infographic. And then graphic. You want some sort of copyright license. What are people allowed to do with your infographic, whether it's a copyright or you're releasing it under Creative Commons? So include the URL to the location, the web page where you are posting the infographic originally. People that share infographics online will share the JPEG image, but not link back to the original site. So you want people to be able to find their way back to your company page or find their way back to the original infographic on your website. You've got to include that URL in the JPEG image of the infographic itself. So they find it on another site, they still make their way back to yours. This is probably the biggest question we ever get as to what tools do we use to design infographics. The first one I'll share is Office, because pretty much everybody has Office. You can easily use Office not only to create charts and design them better, but also if you want to create complete infographics. Please don't just use the default templates. That's going to make your data look like everybody else's data and is not going to be memorable for anybody. In PowerPoint, this is what a default chart looks like. If you spend some time using PowerPoint as a design tool, you turn this chart into this chart, which is the same data, the same chart, just cleaned up, where we put company logos for Lowe's and Home Depot on top of the chart. We got rid of the legend. We got rid of the grid lines. We put the data actually in the chart. We've even colored the bars to match the logos. And now this chart I can use in a presentation, in an infographic, in a blog post. It looks clean and unique and memorable. It's really easy to use, and I didn't have to go to outside design software to do it. In Excel, you can also break out of the charting tools and use icons, 1 out of 5 icons. Or scales on the left, the red, yellow, green scales go from 0 to 100%. It's just a rectangle drawn and circles drawn and placed appropriately match the data. The design visualization style doesn't exist in the charting tool. It's one that you have to create manually. You may not be familiar with conditional formatting. Usually about 10-20% of my audiences have ever heard of conditional formatting. The idea in Excel is that it will, in this case, I use color coding of the cell backgrounds match the data, but you could do a whole bunch of other things. You can format the cells any way you want to, dependent on the data. So in this case, it's showing the layout of a warehouse in a spreadsheet, and it's laid them out so that what we want is the ideal situation on the left, where green, the most frequently picked inventory, is up close to the truck docks at the top, and red, the slowest moving inventory, is down far away from the truck so that your employees don't have to walk that far very often. On the right is what happens when, say, the shift supervisor loads today's inventory and takes a look at where's all the actual inventory today and how can he work on optimizing and helping his shift, his employees or whatever, be more efficient in what they do. Early on, the crash calendar in Wisconsin, this is an Excel spreadsheet. This is a spreadsheet laid out to match those calendars and uses conditional formatting to code all those cells to match the accidents. So this is built in Excel, and 2012 comes around or 2013 comes around. All they have to do is load the new data, and it will create a new crash calendar for them automatically. Most design infographics have our favorite vector graphics program, where we put everything together to make the infographics that are posted online. If you're trained as a graphic designer, it's probably one of the Adobe products. Illustrator is the main one. But like PowerPoint, at its heart, a vector graphics program. It just by default sizes things to the fit presentation slides. But you can go into PowerPoint and make a whole infographic and then design it in PowerPoint. And there are some people that do that because PowerPoint's the tool they have. There are design tools that are now available and trying to build up as replacements for Illustrator or PowerPoint or any other desktop software. These websites you can use through the browser upload images, use images they have, build charts. You can build like a chart in Excel and then import it online to make it part of your infographic. And all these tools are building capabilities very quickly. They're actually becoming quite popular. I will work with one of them, Visme. So with you guys, Visme you can try for free. I think you can make up to 2 or 3 projects for free in an account. But if you ever decide to subscribe, it's I think it's something like $8 or $9 a month to subscribe. They've given me a discount code COOL30, get you 30% off the lifetime of your account. I don't get anything back from that. That's just part of my work with them, so I just wanted to share that. Action, but usually not to put the whole infographic together. We usually use image editing tools to clean up photos or logos or icons and then move them over to the vector graphics program. Some they should be aware of the Noun Project is a fabulous website that has a huge library of icons that anybody can use. I think they're up to like 60,000 or 70,000 icons. You search for these icons by keyword, and then you can use those icons free of charge. You give the designer attribution, or if you pay, I think $10 a month to subscribe, you can use as many icons as you want with providing attribution. It's just a great place to do searches, find images and icons related to your concepts or your topics, whatever your design for your infographic or presentation is. You don't use them just to give you ideas of different images related to your topic. Wordle.net is probably the most popular site to create word clouds. It does require Java, but you can paste in there as you want, and it will do all the math and create a word cloud for you. This is the Facebook privacy policy, where on Facebook's page did a select all and copy, paste into Wordle, and within a couple seconds, I've got a word cloud where it's done all that frequency calculation automatically. Then you can change fonts, you can change colors and mess with it, and then export it as an image to use in a report, in a presentation, or an infographic. .net is one of many sites that create charts that Excel and PowerPoint don't make, like color coding countries in the world based on your data, temperature or speed gauges, and something. You can use your data on the web browser, export that as an image, and then use it in your infographic presentation. But it doesn't use data, it's more process diagrams. So flow charts, org charts, Venn diagrams, they're starting to get into mind mapping. All of these you can create on the website and export that image to use elsewhere. The fun tool where you can create that pop-up animation we talked about earlier on top of an image in the background. And that image in the background could be a photo. It could actually be an infographic that you want to have more information pop up. And that more information can be text, it can be YouTube videos, it can be photos. And again, it really hides that second level of information so that your primary design can be kept pretty clean and simple. Is a website that uses the Google API. So it's like mapping locations when you go to Google Maps, except you can upload a spreadsheet of locations and it will map them all at once. So this is 250 store locations in the US. We're all on a spreadsheet. You paste it into Batch Geo and it goes out and uses Google API to map all those. This one in particular US, but it'll map anything where Google Maps goes. So you could do anything worldwide and create a map as well. Get into heavier data. So Tableau Public is a data analytics and visualization tool. Tableau, the paid desktop version, allows you to hook live to back-end databases, SQL, JSON files, that sort of thing, so that your data changes, your visual changes. But Tableau Public is going to be free, where you can use all the tools, but the way to get data in is to upload either a text file or a spreadsheet of your data. So it's a static set of data that you can then visualize. Interactive visualization, so that you can click on like states in the map or colors and certain categories in any of these charts, and it will only highlight those. And it will create this interactive chart and allow you then to use the embed code to put that onto your website. Embed an interactive chart into a blog post or your website or whatever. Start getting into JavaScript. and using HTML to actually program data visualizations. Google has some free ones that you can try. They have a whole bunch of different, pretty simple chart styles you can apply. They also have this public data library of hundreds of thousands of public data sets. The stuff you can imagine, like population, UN data, World Bank data, IMF data, that kind of stuff. And so all that's in Google Public Data. The one caveat I'll add is that if you upload your data just using one of Google's charting tools, you are adding your data to the public library. So if you are doing a confidential internal design, do not upload your data to Google. Yes, they do 6 charts. And they do 6 charts in JavaScript, but they do them really cleanly and really well. You can take that JavaScript code and apply it to your own data, embed that into your website so that you've got a pretty simple line chart or a donut chart, animates when people see it because it's just a really well done JavaScript chart, but there are only 6 styles. That's really sweat. Similar, where they have script charts that you can use. You can take the code and then add your own data to it, part of a web page, but these are all interactive, like you can see the animation on the screen, and hundreds of chart styles. There are some that you can use for free for non-commercial use, but if you're going to use this as part of your company page, that's considered commercial use and you have to pay a subscription fee. Program websites. D3 is the hot data visualization language right now. You can create hundreds and hundreds of different types of data visualizations using D3 to segment and process your data and turn it into a visual. These are used for not only what you see here, some really complicated, intricate data visualizations online, also be used for pretty simple ones, donut charts and bar charts and line charts and that sort of thing. If you're into web coding or you've got a team that's into designing your website, D3 is the tool that everybody's really gravitating towards to create these online. And then the languages are in processing. What being on the right here is called flight paths. And so this data visualization using this programming language is visualizing every single airline flight over the US in a 24-hour period. See there as it's sunset and the day ends over on the West Coast and it's going to start up on the East Coast again when morning starts. And on the right is just a simple R programming language visualization of Mandelbrot set and chaos theory. So these are created visuals on screen that are then captured as videos that I can share here, and then you can share them as videos. And then the last is just a mention of infographic resume. So all these good things about infographics that we've talked about, they're easier to understand, faster to process, certainly more memorable, now finding their ways onto people's job resumes when they're looking for new work. Find people highlight their timelines or their top skills or the geographic locations they've lived or the languages they speak or the schools and education they've gotten. Good. So is, be very, very careful. Go back to tip number 1, accuracy. That when you put any visuals on your resume, you want to just double check, triple check, quadruple check that they're accurate. That is the one place that you do not want to shoot your credibility in the foot. If you mess up and your visualization is wrong on your resume, your resume is going to go straight into the trash. I have a gallery of these resumes that I'm building on Pinterest. I have somewhere close to 1,200, I think, already on this Pinterest board of just different ways that people have visualized their resumes. Some are, this first option are complete separate pages. Next resume. So it might be a page that you put on your LinkedIn page or your website or hand to somebody in an interview.
Randy, for some reason, everything was going fine, and that last bit about the resume stopped. Can you hear me?
Yeah, here, hold on a second. I had a call coming in and messed everything up.
No problem.
Let me option 1. Okay. So is people make a completely separate page they can hand over in an interview or post on the LinkedIn page or their own website, but it's completely separate from the full text resume that a lot of hiring managers and recruiters are already familiar with and comfortable with. See a lot of this style, but we're really starting to see some more in two, which is just a couple visuals that are built into the full text resume. So there's no separate document. This one was a timeline on the left and a little bar chart of skills on the right. The full text of their resume is still on this page. So we're starting to see more and more like this, where it's a lot subtle, not as big and bold as the full page ones, but actually brings some visuals into what are probably or should be the most important points that you want someone to remember from your resume. No surprise, websites have started popping up that will link to your LinkedIn page, scrape all the information you uploaded there, and create you a visual resume using one of their templates. And then you can start editing it and changing the colors and rearranging that information any way you want to. These are links on that links page if you want to test any of those out. There's new enough. I think if you were to use one of these tools, your resume would still look new and different and not be recognizable as coming from a template. But as it's become more and more popular, you want your resume to look like a template that came from a website that they've seen 4 or 5 other resumes that look just the same. So tools, I have 100 tools on the Cool Infographics site on the page /tools, and I'm adding more all the time because more and more people are putting out visualization tools online. If you come across any that I don't have on the list, please send a note. I would love to keep building this as a repository of all the best tools that we can find online for anybody to use. And let's just wrap up. A discussion group on LinkedIn called Cool Infographics. You're welcome to join. We have about 400 members, I think, and really the intent is to discuss the craft of designing data visualizations, infographics, and even different methods and tactics and tricks and tips about how to publish them online. So you're all welcome to join, read through the discussions, read through the questions, and pose your own. Like I said earlier on, my Cool Infographics is online, coolinfographics.com/book. On that page is a link where you can download the first chapter for free. It's available as a PDF if you just want to read through. It goes through really the science of data visualization that we started this presentation with, and let you take a look at what the kind of content is in the book. Peter, I'll open it to you and open it up to questions anybody has.
Randy, thank you so much just for taking the time that you did. I said it before and I say it again, this is just a very cool presentation. And those are the comments that we've been getting in here as well. So let me open it up to you guys. We wanted to make this as accessible to you guys as possible. What sort of questions do you have for Randy at this point? Go ahead, Ken.
How do you get started on it? Once you get the data, what is the first that you make, or maybe like the first 2 or 3 steps that you take with it?
I've got an infographic design process that I follow that I didn't actually cover. So we start with the data and sure we understand what that insight is or what's interesting in the data to tell a story. We'll then do a wireframe. So if we know it's going to fit on a printed page, we'll take a printed page and figure out how we're going to fit this information. And it's usually just blocks of text or squares that says visual here, and we just sort of lay out how we want that information to look. And we go through an iterative process where we try 3 or 4 different ways to visualize the information to try and look at it and see what's working and tweak it and improve it. We always try to visualize it a couple different ways, not different colors, but completely different visual styles. To see what really works, because sometimes you want it to be fun and amusing, or you want it to be business and serious. And so it gives us an idea of looking at it and figuring what's successful and what's not. That's an iterative process from there to get from our design ideas to the finished product.
And there's a little bit more information in the book on that as well.
There's a little bit more information, yes.
Thanks, Kim.
If you're doing something for a client, what type of questions would you ask them when trying to figure out what they want to see from the data?
It depends on whether they already know what the story is or if they just have some data and want to start from there. Sometimes we'll help clients look at survey data and find some interesting nuggets to design into their report and become learnings from that, say, research or survey data. Or sometimes they've done research, they've written the press release, and they want an infographic that they can simplify that information and make it more engaging when they release it, not only publicly, but also internally to their employees. So if they already know their story, that's really easy. They've already identified that data. We are also in the process where we'll go through and dig through the data and try and help them find what some of those insights and learnings are and what's make interesting, engaging content.
And at this, we're seeing, of course, exploding interest in the infographic field. How do you relate this back to data visualization, which is sort of very grew out of?
Data visualization and even the word infographic really comes from the newspaper printing industry. So an infographic was that sports graphic or that weather map graphic that newspapers were put in, in the 60s and 70s, and the word graphic only meant something to the designer and to the guy running the printing press. But right now, we can all share content as much as we want, and there's been this explosion of people that want visual content. And a lot of people, and let me up and say, there are a lot of bad infographics out there, right? Most of the infographics that you'll find online, I would consider to be bad infographic designs, because people skipped the data viz part and just went straight to making an infographic. Data viz is an art and a skill by itself, and you really want to be good at that if you're going to use that as a tool to build infographics. You'd be good at simplifying a chart and some learnings called pre-attentive attributes, where you use color and shape and position to attract your reader's eye, and things like that. You can learn in designing charts that make your infographics better when you put it all together.
Great, thank you. And you had a question?
I actually have a couple for you, Randy. The first one I want to start with, especially for our group and for our class, a lot of our projects want some sort of either infographic or some sort of data. And that's like a tool or site or something. So Tableau, great, but it's expensive. Like from my project, I definitely need to come up with something that year or even month after month to throw in data, and it spits out what changes the visualization, basically. Is it a good tool to do that, other than, again, it was out there, but it's very expensive. So,
well, so if you don't think you could use the free Tableau Public. Tableau,
it probably wouldn't be allowed to be Tableau Public, because I think that's all shared data or the public.
Yes, you're right. Google, if you upload to Tableau Public, Tableau actually wants you to publish on their site as part of their gallery of visualizations. I know there's even another package called Watson Analytics, free version that you can create graphics with. But we generally have a toolbox, but a whole bunch of different data visualization tools that we then pull into that vector graphics program when we're designing the overall infographic. Because if we're going to map geographic data, that's a completely different tool than a word cloud, and a mind map. So we might use 3 different tools and then pull all those together into one design, because they come from different locations. Some people, and I said earlier on that some people, they use PowerPoint for designing the overall infographic. The advantage is if you build your charts using the charting tool in Excel, and you can link the data in Excel, if you update the data, your infographic in PowerPoint updates automatically. It limits you based on what you can do, because you have to use their charts and only their charts if you want it to update automatically, but it can be done, and I know a couple companies that do that.
And to kind of go a little different direction towards the end there, the whole resume thing, I kind of have a couple questions. One, I was wondering, is it a little too flashy? And maybe it's just a sign of the times. I might be a little bit old-fashioned, but and then So I think that's part of the question. And I think the second thing comes to one of your resumes showed like the skill set. That your bar chart off of it. Where exactly is it pulling that information to get? Like, I mean, is it going onto your LinkedIn and saying, "Hey, 6 people have said John is good in leadership," so it makes chart, and then so on.
You're putting too much into it. If it's one of the automatic tools that's going to pull data from your LinkedIn page, it's going to make a chart of your skills. It's going to take your skill and make that 100%, and then make others in comparison to how, job might be your best skill, and then other software packages might be smaller than that. It's not really comparing you to, say, the industry of candidates, just your own comparison. And if you design your own, which most people do and don't use those tools, it's really up to you. You're just sort of putting out there, I think, really strong in this area, and I'm here in building and maybe taking classes in this area, but it's an area that you're interested in and want to show that you're, trying to spread your wings.
And, when Randy showed me this last month, I went out and did mine, and I'll be glad to show that to you when you come to class next week.
Okay.
To go to your first question, too, which is, there's a mixed response to the infographic resumes. It's not, all songs and roses and rainbows. A lot of people love them, and there are, some people that just don't like them at all and don't want to see visuals. They can read a text resume. They know how to read a text resume, and that's all they want to see. We are seeing some mixed reactions where, in that first option where your infographic resume is a separate document, still have the full text resume, that you can make that something that grabs somebody's attention online, on LinkedIn or your website, or post in social media. But when somebody comes to your site and they download the PDF of my resume, it's the full text resume. You could do that. One topic I didn't cover.
That was cool. I mean, your whole presentation has been very enlightening. It's very got a lot of detail and a lot of good information that I thoroughly did. So, I was just curious on the, is it flashy? Like, if I'm at a job tomorrow, should I create one of these and then say, here you guys go? And they're like, they're fine.
Yeah, and I'll put there's a whole chapter dedicated to infographic resumes in the book. It's a growing field. It's not just a field for graphic designers. I've done infographic designs for executives, for accountants, for engineers, even for a pastor. All industries that are trying to, break out of that pile of 100 resumes for every open position.
Definitely.
Another category of companies that want you to upload your resume to their automated system. And so how do you handle an infographic resume in that way? That's a whole different topic.
Like a Harold. So we do have an HR specialist online. Does the HR specialist, has she seen any of these infographic resumes come across?
I have resumes. I don't really work in the part of the business that hires people, but I've never actually heard of that either, which is kind of interesting. Okay. So I'm interested to see where it goes in the future if we start getting those.
Cool. You saw one. A designer, that would make perfectly good sense. Look at how good. Who's your resume? I did. Right? Absolutely.
Yeah, I would assume it would, if like a graphic design sort of role, like those kind of creative roles would be more apt to have those interesting resumes, whereas traditional roles like a finance person isn't likely to have one.
I'll bet one.
Yeah. And you'll find, sometimes it doesn't have to be like a lot of those full-page ones on the Pinterest board or full-page, flashy, big colors. Some of them are as simple as just putting company logos next to their jobs and their history in the text resume, where it just adds that visual element. And the applicant is trying to do is take the credibility of the company. I worked for 3M, I worked for Coke, and it made it instantly recognizable to whoever that hiring manager is reading that resume. So it can be simple visual. It doesn't have to be these big, bold, colorful charts.
Again, pleasure. Look, just scrolling through the 1,200 resumes that you've collected over and staring at what people have done.
Yeah, and the website, the Pinterest board, I will say that's the good, the bad, and the ugly. I've done no judgment whatsoever other than trying to capture what's going on and what people are publishing. I would say some of those are horrendous. So don't get those and think those are all great resumes. But inspirational.
Inspirational, exactly right. Well, again, we appreciate the fact that you like the picture. Again, the list of just that you put up here, every chart that he had in this presentation is referenced. So some of you were taking pictures of the screens and things, but it's a whole lot better if you just go directly online. So again, just a tremendous amount of work that's gone into this presentation. We really appreciate that aspect of it. Other questions that we have for Randy at this point? I will say that one thing while Eleni's getting ready to ask, we had John's customer said, well, I want 10,000 of these things by the end of the semester. How are you guys doing? We laughed as well. Exactly. Eleni, what?
Mine kind of comes in as a bit of a thing that, do we know, like, John's client, he wants 10,000 of those. Or there could be clients that could say, I want one of these that has showed 10,000 pieces of information. Is it up to us to tell them, we can give you 1,000 of these with only message conveyed, or how deep or how far can we go, or should we go before it just gets too boring? Like, can we put on an infographic before it goes, the details get lost in them, or themselves get lost.
He wants to know what the magic number is, Randy.
42.
There you go. I get that, by the way. So it's going to depend, correct?
Absolutely. So, that stock chart at the beginning had 80,000 plus data points on it. If you were to spend a little bit of time and say you wanted to highlight dip in the 90s, and make that your story, the rest of that data just becomes contextual, it becomes a reference, but you really, you can change the design so it focuses attention on one particular learning or story within the data. And tops of classes, that's what we do, is we take data and we say, what's the story, and how do we edit and design a chart to actually tell the story so that it is actually drawing your audience to those conclusions that you're trying to share, that you found this information and you've got to be able to convey it. Answer other than more than one. It's really hard to do a chart with only one number.
But that's where your value as a designer comes in. And again, this gets back to the skills that you guys are developing. You go in there and say to them, I'm sorry, 10,000 is not the right number, and 1 isn't the right number. The answer somewhere in between is probably lower rather than higher. So let's talk about what are 3 important things that if people are going to look at your chart for 5 seconds, you want them to be able to take away. And that's one of the things I'll remember forever. It's that 5-second rule that's on there. If people spend more time on it than that, why the effort into it?
Usually going through the design process is an effort at cutting away data, right? So companies will come and they feel like they have to throw every piece of data they have into it because it shows them how credible because they have all this data, when really we cut away all the data that doesn't help support that key message. So they're telling that one story, and we're telling it really, really well. You do get it in that 5 seconds.
I have a question.
Okay.
As part of the development process, what kind of considerations do you make for who the intended audience is, and if you have any best practices for that? I assume that an infographic that you create for exhibits isn't going to be the same one that you would create for, like, VCU students, for instance.
Beginning of our design process, we have a creative brief that's designed for, so it's an infographic creative brief that's got 15 questions on it, like, what is your key message? Do you already have the data, or are we going to do some data research as part of the project? And one of those questions is tone. So are you trying to convey a very serious message, or do you want this to have fun, cartoony kind of characters and be something that's amusing that people are going to share? Sometimes corporate graphics, they want to be fun. It might be employee training, and they want to make it more engaging. And you're right, if it's a board meeting presentation, it's generally a lot more serious and to the point. They've only got so much time for this presentation, and they've got to walk through and get, 20 sides of data, that they have to communicate pretty quickly. If it wants it, you can shoot me a note. I'm happy to share that creative brief Word doc that you're, welcome to share and use and, your own, that kind of thing.
I think everybody would be interested in that.
Just send it to you, Peter, if you want to distribute it, or anybody can send me a note. My email is on the screen. Send me a note, and I will send you that creative brief.
Got it. Thank you for spending 2 hours of your time. We really appreciate it. It's just a tremendous presentation. Again, my hat's off to you for doing such a great job of putting all this dense material into one place and conveying it so effectively and efficiently on this. I'll look forward to catching up with you somewhere on the lecture circuit at some point, and I hope you have a good holiday on that.
Well, I appreciate it very much. You guys know where to find me.
You bet, and see if we can send some business your way.
Excellent.
That's the goal of these things. These guys they're in a business school. Okay, so you sold 2 more copies on the line here while we were online. All right, Peter. Randy, really appreciate it.
Thanks, Randy.
Thank you. And if you want a copy of the recording, let me know, and I'll be glad to send that out to you in case you have to appear somewhere or can't appear somewhere.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
Give me a second here. Let me make sure I get the recording correct. We would have to do all that and then lose the opportunity. We can if you can find one in here. Sure. No. I think we'll be good. How does one stop the recording? Let's see.
It's the button.
Let's see.